All right, we opened up the beer making kit from Brooklyn Brew Shop. We're gonna make a everyday IPA with a little spin. This is all the ingredients. You got your grains, your hops, your sanitizing kit, your airlock, your, I guess, tube.
Hose for the rack and cane.
Yeah. Thermometer. Your, I guess, another little straw. That is the gallon it came with. Now we're washing a pot to boil it over.
Oh wow!
These are the.
That's good. That's
This is special.
You can't really see it, but.
When you use something, don't. No se pega.
Yeah, don't scratch it. No metal.
Can't see. Well, anyways, it says you need a 6-quart pot, fine mesh strainer, and a funnel. Now what we're gonna do is maybe in a few go to the instructions. Where is it? Right there. BrooklynBrewShop.com/instructions.
In the right angle?
Yeah.
No, like no, I mean like holding it.
Yeah, just keep it that way and don't like keep turning it up and down.
All right, so we're spicing up the kit. Kit came with a bag of grain that you actually have to mash. There's no mash extract for this. But we're also going to spice it up a little bit. It's supposed to be an IPA kit, but we're adding some flaked wheat for extra body, a little bit of chocolate rye malt for a little spicy dark kick, and some roasted barley to get a nice stout-like flavor.
Sounds good.
And a little bit of dark crystal, give a little caramel flavor to the beer. So we're gonna get all these in the grain. We don't have a fine strainer, so we're gonna use this muslin sock, kind of like a big giant tea bag. And we're actually gonna have to mash this. So we'll be holding it between 144 and 152 for a whole hour.
Now we're pouring it in. What is this, Drew?
So this is the base malt that came with the kit. This is probably nothing but American two-row. There might be a little crystal or caramel malt in here.
This is a dirty dog. Trying to sniff.
Yeah, hey man, you gotta have spice.
Little hair and stank.
Little hair and steak, man. Never hurt nobody.
Alright, so now we're gonna put that in there, or
Yeah,
wait
so
till
now it's just
boil?
like a giant tea bag. And actually, let's hold on, because if you start out at room temperature and you bring it up, that's really good to do if you're going to do a partial mash and you're later going to add like malt extract.
Okay.
But that'll take it through and it allows some of the proteins to break down things, and that'll actually make the beer more fermentable, and which will reduce the body of the beer. But since now we're trying to give it sort of a stout-like flavor, we want all the body we can. We want this beer to be soupy. So we're gonna wait. We're gonna get this water all the way up to 160 degrees, and then we're gonna add that.
So tie this off?
Yep. So tie that off. Tie it up high so we can smush it around. And let's get this baby cranking. Actually, we'll have to do one here.
How's that?
Perfect.
And the kit, the thermometer, so we're gonna stick that in there. Not now, because it's nowhere near boiling, obviously. So just a spin on what the box was saying to do.
So also traditional is to only do 1 quart of water per pound when you're mashing in. Mashing is the process of letting the enzymes do their work to break the starches down into simple sugars to be good yeast food. But I don't find you ever get a reduction in efficiency if you use more than 1 quart per pound.
Okay.
So if you're only using 1 quart per pound, that does kind of end up looking like oatmeal. But I tend to just do the whole volume of water to begin with. I think you can rinse the grains a little bit better, and then that way you don't have to go through a sparge, which is a rinsing stage.
Well, you have to keep rinsing it and rinsing.
Right. And since we don't have a strainer, this will be good enough. We'll just let it drain out. We'll just hold the bag up above the water, let it drain out. So once this is up to about 160, we'll throw that in for the hour.
What's the difference between like a lager, a stout, pale ale, IPA?
There's really only two different styles of beers. You have lagers and ales.
Okay.
And the difference between those two is the yeast. They're two actually separate species of yeast. One they call a top fermenting yeast, the other one's a bottom fermenting yeast. And the ales, if you look at the fermenter, you'll see crud floating on the top.
It's the yeast that came with the kit.
And so that, because that came with an IPA kit, it's definitely an ale kit. And one of the differences between the ale and the lager yeast, because that's the only difference between the two style of beers, is that the ale yeast, they like to ferment at slightly higher temperatures. So they like to be over 60 degrees, preferably in the high 60s, maybe even the low 70s. There's some real freak ale yeast, like say French Saison yeast. They don't even mind being over 90, which is very unusual. But for their happy spots, about 68.
Is that why they say put it away in a dark place?
That's more to protect the hop oils, because some of the things that are in the hops will convert into a sulfur compound.
Oh, and it spoils kind of.
And it smells like Heineken. It smells skunky, and that comes from light.
Once it's done, can you put it in the fridge in a dark fridge? Obviously, when you close, it's dark, or should you still leave it outside just in a dark place?
You should always store beer in a dark place. Always.
But it doesn't have to be refrigerated.
If it's a light-colored beer, it's usually best if it's consumed within the first 6 months.
Okay.
Unless it's a very strong beer, but those will last a little bit longer. A very dark beer or a very strong beer or even a very dark strong beer, sometimes those will last years and even just get better in the second, third year. But with light beers, that's almost never the case.
Okay.
One of the few exceptions are sour beers where some of the weird bacteria and some of the stranger yeast, they'll keep working for over a year. I just made a lambic that minimum 18 months. That's just fermentation.
18 months?
Minimum.
Oh, and this is 2 weeks.
This is 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So that's you can kind of start to understand why these ales are so popular in homebrew. I was homebrewing for years before I even attempted to make a lager, because when you start messing with lagers, the temperature control has to be a lot more precise.
Yeah.
It has to be below 60 degrees. Well, no one has a room in their house that's constantly just below 60 degrees.
Or getting a regulator.
So that's when you need temperature control, you need a regulator, you need a fermentation chamber. And then also it's just the yeast. Like you'll notice this came with this little tiny packet of yeast. And it's like, hey, just dump it in there. Well, with lagers that doesn't fly, because you're fermenting so cold that the yeast just works slower. Just like any other organism is, once it gets cold, it just kind of slows down
You
a little
gotta
bit.
constantly mix it? Or
No,
stir it up?
what you end up doing is you end up pitching a whole lot more. And you also have to make sure that's a whole lot more healthy. So that yeast has been it's been dehydrated, and that ends up hurting the cell walls a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. So if you're going to do a lager, you would have to have a lot more yeast, and you would want it to be more healthy than that.
Okay.
And so that's getting into yeast health is a little more advanced
It's
stuff.
a lot.
Getting into pitching rates, which is how many millions of cells per milliliter, that's a little more advanced. The temperature control is more advanced, and that's why beginning home brewers almost never make lagers. Why would you, when you can just throw that in and throw it in the closet where it's about 70 and don't worry about it, And also, if you make a lager and the temperatures aren't quite right, it's very sulfury. Like it stinks like farts. It's not nice. It's not nice at all.
Cool. All right. We're just gonna wait for it to boil and.
No, we're just getting to 160.
Oh, that's right.
Got the thermometer.
Yes.
So 160 is actually too hot to mash. But what happens is that when you put the grains in, the grains right now are only at 60 or 70 degrees, and we have a few pounds of grain.
Oh,
So that will actually bring the temperature of the water down. So we want to get the water to about 160, which we've already shot past. and then the grain will cool it down a little bit more. Now we gotta cool the water down. Pour some out. Pour some cold water in here.
You want to pour?
Still too hot. Take some more out.
What happened?
Mashing temp, got the water at 160. We're gonna use this big old muslin sack to mash in so we don't have to filter later. There we go.
Now, why did we tie it up top?
Just to keep, so we can just dump the whole thing in there. We got a spoon, we can smash it around in there. You have a...
Yeah. Good enough. It's alright.
Yep, perfect. So it dropped from actually 150 down to 148 just from putting the grain in. So now we're going to try and keep it between 144 and 152 for an hour. So it's 6 o'clock now, so we'll be done at 7. That's good enough. Can heal.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
What do you really want to do?
Because the water's not contacting the grain, then it's not.
You cook it.
Yeah. There's an enzymatic process. It only happens between 144 and 152. And for that process to happen, the enzymes need to be in contact with the sugars. And the only way they're going to do that is if there's water between them. So now we got the whole thing in here. Well, so it dropped down. So let's give it a little more heat, get it up over 150. Keep the flame low. You don't want to scorch the bottom of the bag. So like one of the, if you this is actually something you guys actually want to do, what a lot of people do is they'll get a cooler and they'll put a filter in the bottom of the cooler with a hose coming out of it, and then that way if you put the water at 160 and you pour it over the grains and it comes down to 152, you put the lid on the cooler, it'll just stay there for an hour.
Yeah.
And you don't have to stand here going, oh, it's too hot, oh, it's too cold, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold. So right now we're at 145, so yeah, we need a little more heat. And as the steam evaporates off, that cools it down.
Smells good.
It's just kind of a pain in the butt.
Smells like sweet oatmeal cookies.
Yeah. Got the heat on?
Yep.
Get a little more juice. Maybe up over 150. So the heat range is about 144 to 158. In reality, anything in that range will work. But there's two different enzymes that are at work at those two different temperatures. The enzyme that works down closer to 144. That one really breaks down the sugars. It really breaks them down into the simplest things. And when you're drinking a beer, if you feel like the beer is thick, what's actually happening is that you're tasting undigested sugars. Your mouth, it's called mouthfeel. That mouthfeel is coming from those extra sugars in the beer that the yeast couldn't eat. Great idea.
pollo que estuvieran marcando ahí.
Nice.
That's what I was
Papi, no pueden correr la olla donde el mal le dijo porque está muy
No,
caliente.
se tiene que hervir ya.
Sí, pero le está dando todo, no está en el centro del fuego. Ahí se está quemando
Good
usted,
enough,
calentándose. ese
Any last
estómago.
words?
Somebody want to hold one?
Yes. I got.
You got it?
I got them both.
It was kind of hard trying to hold it like that.
Dígale a él que si pueden hermarle ahí o correr la olla ahí.
Show the fans.
On the phone. Pause it.
I already recorded it like this.
Oh,
No, you gotta.
All right, so it's been an hour. We've held the beer between 144 and 155, which is pretty warm. And then we started heating it up some more to get it up to 170. If you get a little hotter, the grains drain out of the bag a little bit better. So then it's been a whole hour. The mash is done. Now it's 170. We pull the bag up out so the wort will flow out of the grains. A lot of people say you shouldn't squeeze the bag because you'll squeeze out some tannin-like flavors out of the grain. I've never found that to be too noticeable myself, and you don't want to waste any beer you don't have to waste. So I'm all about squeezing the bag. Now that we have got the heat on full, we're going to bring it up to a boil. We just added a little bit of Columbus hops, which are a really strong bittering hop. For the first wort hop addition. Traditional hop addition, you don't add the hops until the wort's already boiling, and usually boil them for about 60 minutes. We're doing a little different technique here called first wort hopping, where you actually add the hops before it starts boiling. And supposedly there's some different interactions that happen with the alpha acids, and the bittering comes out a little bit more smooth. So we got the Columbus in there. Another 40 minutes, we'll add a flavor addition, and because of the stout, we'll probably skip the aroma addition. So now we're off to the boil. Steve, you can quit squeezing your sack now.
he's having so much
I
fun.
want to get everything on my sack.
You could save that and make it look like sand from Trick or Treat.
I think that's it.
That's it.
Put it in the sink.
I'm gonna waste it.
You don't want to waste it.
It's like a brain, a placenta.
The coconut.
So now we gotta boil it.
Mm-hmm. Put a cover on it and boil it faster.
No, you don't want to do that because there are sulfur compounds in the grains,
Oh, so you want to get that?
So there's three different things that are happening in the boil. One is the alpha acids in the hops are getting converted into isoalpha acid, which creates the bitterness that kind of offsets the sweetness of the wort. Two, you're driving off sulfur compounds from poorly modified malts, just in general nastiness. You're also coagulating proteins so that the beer will clear up better. And you're sterilizing, and then also lastly, there's semi like Maillard reactions that happen in here. Maillard reaction is what causes like toast to turn brown. The starches and the sugars they get toasted a little bit, and they pick up more interesting flavors. So lots of good reasons to do a full length boil. So once this gets to a boil, we'll set a timer for an hour, and then it'll be time to cool it off.
So boil for an hour. Cool.
So you figure this way, cooks cannot mix with beer, because, you know. Damn, just get done already.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I feel like that after a 13-hour brew day.
Oh my god.
My wife feels like that after a 30-minute brew day.
No, but if you really think about it in a restaurant, right? You try to do it slowly like this, you're gonna have so much complaint. It's like, you see where I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, but that's why in the restaurant they make the soup the day before. Not always. Alright, so we about doubled the grains originally from what came with this kit. It just came with like pale ale malt, maybe a little crystal malt for the IPA. We added a bunch of flaked wheat, dark crystal malt, chocolate rye, roasted barley. So now the beer is a lot stronger than it was originally intended to be, which means it's also a lot sweeter. So to counteract that, I added a little bit more hops, get a little more bittering into it. So this is Chinook. It's a really good bittering hop. Alpha acid is 11.6%, and I just sprinkled a little bit extra in here just a minute ago. Don't want to go too strong. I mean, stouts can have a surprising amount of bitterness, but you definitely don't want to overdo it because it can kind of clash with the roasted flavors. Roasted on top of too bitter is just not pleasant. The flavor edition. 10 minutes left in the boil. Here we go.
And then what do we do?
Then you kill the heat, man.
Then we chill it.
Then we chill it. Add the fermenter. Add some yeast. Good to go.
What can you do with the leftover mash, I guess, that we...
Make people biscuits, dog biscuits, platypus biscuits.
Platypus.
Grain.
Dirt.
Tastes so good.
No, it tastes sweet. Tastes good. Malty, chocolatey.
Ah, that's
Que
natural.
eso lleve lechera o algo, hijo, esas cookies.
Alright, you put the oatmeal in the oven. And why are we putting it in here?
We want to dry it.
And then after, you said we could store it, right? Just like flour or anything else.
Yeah.
And then you substitute oatmeal, you use that stuff.
Yeah, make like oatmeal raisin cookies.
Squeezing it.
We can check this out.
Just squeezing the sack.
Hey.
More leftover stuff. Tastes good, sweet. See how dark that is?
Oh, it smells awesome,
Right.
man.
Look how dark that is.
Smells good.
Just for your asthma. Inhale.
Why would you stuff that in my face?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure.
3.
Alright, so we've been boiling for an hour, so ready to kill the heat. Had the lid on for a little while to help let the steam kind of sterilize the lid. Because second turn off this heat, bacteria are your enemy. Put it over here in the sink, get it full up. Try and chill it down.
I get some ice with
Yeah, definitely.
Go.
It's got the ice bath going, got a few ice cubes in here, speed it up. But this still takes for freaking ever. This will be an hour or two. You want to change the water out every once in a while when it warms up. You don't want to get too cold because this thing's already floating in here. Alright, I'm out of here, muchachos.
Alright, so what does it need to get at? 70? 60?
Yeah.
And then what, we pour it in there. We
Less than half a pack of yeast.
less than half a pack. And then this goes on.
Yep. And the other end goes into a glass of water.
Where do you recommend I store it? Just in the basement?
Uh-huh. In a dark corner of the basement. In a closet, something like that.
So once, I guess, how long do you leave it?
About 2 weeks.
When you put the,
So you just need 2 or 3 days because what's going to happen is because there's we doubled up the malt, we doubled up the sugar, so the yeast can go crazy. It's gonna bubble, it's gonna foam, it's gonna spit, and it might come up and try and come out.
Oh.
So if you have the airlock on here, it just makes a mess. You might even just pop the top off and really make a mess. If you have that, it'll just push the crap out up through the tube and into the glass.
Alright.
But on the glass, you want the glass half full of water so that it kind of seals it from air getting back up in there.
Okay. Oh, like a brake system.
Yeah, exactly.
What is, alright, so when do we use this?
No idea.
Because warm, flat beer is no fun. Transfer it into beer oh, okay.
It reseals the bottles, it doesn't tell you how. Yeah, so Grolsch bottles or a capper would be good.
A capper, I don't have a capper. But you really think it's gonna make all that?
What do you mean?
It's gonna, you think it's gonna fill that whole thing up?
Yeah.
Yeah? Can I leave it in there and put it in the fridge and then just drink it later? Like, let's say we have a big party and we just all drink out of that.
It won't be carbonated.
Oh, because you have to bottle it.
And you have to add more priming sugar right before you bottle it.
Oh, that's why it says that sugar. Yeah, right there. Transfer it into beer bottle with a little bit of sugar. I don't understand what this is.
I don't either.
Seal it?
I think what they have you do is they have you take that racking cane and maybe somehow use that to draw siphon to fill the other beer bottles. Yeah. You can stick it on there and make a siphon
Ah, okay.
to fill your bottles.
Instead of just pouring it out one by one. Alright, so either get a capper or get
Grolsch bottles.
Grolsch bottles. I think I have one of those.
You can even use like plastic Coca-Cola bottles.
And
Anything that
tighten it up like that?
Yeah. Wow. I really been meaning to do it for a long time. I just haven't done it. Whoa.
I can give you my Gatorade.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Detail. Intricate.
Sugar.
I cannot drink enough lately. I'm just always freaking.
Ready for
Bottling's good.
There's no bottle.
Unless you like warm flat beer.
Yeah?
Full time room temp. This stuff you kind of want to shuffle around a little bit.
Is it
recording or actually toast it?
Is it? Take a picture.
Taking a picture. Hector. Wow.
Party on, dude.
Hash cookies.
Party on, lady.
See ya. Say bye to your fans.
Bye, friends.
They're all watching. Goodbye. See you again. Hash cookies.
Cookies. You make it sound so bad. So bad. Excuse me.
Oh, God.
Oh man, there goes 10 views.
Exactly. I'll never get more views because you want to see it.
Party's over. And oh, somebody's sleeping. You can't even see his face. Say hi, Rocky.
You want to have upstairs?
Are you still recording? What is your malfunction?
There's some stuff going on out
That's
here.
enough.